Throne and Liberty has, for all intents and purposes, far exceeded expectations. I really like Throne and Liberty. I don't get the Throne and Liberty hype. The duality of man. Regardless of which side of the spectrum you're on, there is no denying that Throne and Liberty up until this point has been a monumental success. Throne and Liberty already had 3 million players in its debut week, says Amazon. This was posted 2 days ago. Now, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the little bell notification. That way you remain up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post daily. Do not miss out. It has been a week since the free-to-play Unreal Engine 4 powered MMORPG Throne and Liberty launched globally on PC, PS5, and Xbox SX. And publisher Amazon Games has now shared the first promising figures on player numbers. According to Amazon, over 3 million players have ventured into the world of Silicium during the first 7 days of availability. Altogether, they have spent more than 24 million hours in the game, an average of 8 hours each. The game fared well on Twitch too, with more than 11 million hours watched on the streaming platform. Christoph Hartmann, VP at Amazon Games, said in a statement, "Bringing Throne and Liberty to players around the world has been a huge shared undertaking by our team and our friends at NCSoft. And we're so pleased to see the results as players join the game. We're only getting started, and we have a series of updates planned, including our first Castle Siege coming soon." This is in reference to the autumn 2024 content roadmap that Amazon posted over on the playthroneandliberty.com website. If you're interested in learning more, I have a dedicated video concerning the entirety of that article and everything you can expect. There really is a lot to unpackage. We recently interviewed Daniel Lafuente, the globalization design manager at Amazon Games, who teased some of the upcoming updates for the MMORPG. According to the official roadmap, November will see the first major guild events in the form of the first tax delivery event in Castle Sieges. Amazon Games is also planning to launch Arena Season 1 for the 3v3 mode and possibly the 2-star co-op dungeons as well. The Korean version of Throne and Liberty already saw the introduction of a whole new mountainous region called Talandre. The Korean version was also a relative failure. I don't want to drag this video down by being negative, but a lot of Korean players were very upset with multiple incarnations of Throne and Liberty. Global seems to have been received a little bit better from what I've seen thus far, where players can even exploit water currents to get an advantage during conquest battles. In Talandre, players will find 4 new field bosses and 2 new arch bosses to defeat. There are also new systems called runes and trait resonance. All of these things will be added in due time to the global version. As always, whenever we have a global version of a Korean game or a Chinese game, we're always playing catch up. We're never in a state where we receive updates at the same time as the original version of the game receives updates. Amazon Games isn't new to big launches, with New World and Lost Ark both setting records right away. However, both games saw massive reductions in the respective player bases over time, especially New World, which is true. New World launched to roughly 913,000 concurrent players on Steam 3 years ago. Now, I will also point out, New World is launching onto console very, very soon, or it might have just launched on a console. I don't know, it was scheduled, I think, for at some point in October. Having a game launch to 900,000 players and within a couple years drop to barely 6,000 players playing concurrently at its peak is concerning. The game is in a very bad state right now. That isn't to say the game is dead, because 6,000 people playing concurrently means tens of thousands of people playing each day, which probably means dozens, maybe even up 50, 60,000 people playing per month. Before we go any further, let me take a moment here to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are phenomenal, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Now let's keep talking. Looking at Lost Ark, it launched 2.5 years ago to 1,325,305 players. That was roughly 400,000 players more than New World. Where New World is stuck at only 6,000 players concurrently, Lost Ark continues to stay at roughly 30,000. I know a lot of those are probably bots. Maybe 15, maybe 20,000 of these concurrent players are real people, but that means that using the same logic we use for New World, there are probably 50 to 60,000 people logging in per day and probably well over 100,000 active players across all servers per month, which is still a phenomenal number. Concerning Throne and Liberty though, I know there have been people that have looked at this and said, yeah, 336,300 is an incredible number. And it is. It really is. This is a very high number that many players didn't see coming. A lot of people figured with the failure that was a Korean version, the global version would struggle to hit 100,000 players. There are also people that were under the impression it would hit over 1 million players, that because it looked better than Lost Ark, it would do better than Lost Ark. Evidently, that is not the case. I think 300,000 is a great number. I do think that that was probably much lower than Amazon had anticipated. This is underwhelming comparatively. I think for whatever reason, the MMO genre right now is in this stagnant state where even if a game is high quality and launches to a positive, overwhelmingly positive reception, it is still not going to do nearly as good today as games did a couple years ago. There are less players interested in MMOs now than there were when Lost Ark came out. Or at the very least, there are less people interested right now in the kinds of MMOs that are being pushed out. I was engaged in a discussion over on Twitter recently where they were stating that the majority of players all play on console. They all play on the Xbox, they all play on the PS5. Most people aren't playing on PC. They're not playing via Steam. The real numbers number in the millions. And I find that hard to believe. I genuinely struggle to believe that MMOs, which are predominantly targeted at PC players, have a larger audience on console than they do on PC. I'm not saying that PlayStation doesn't have 100,000 active players. Xbox doesn't have 100,000 active players. That cumulatively, they might have the equivalent of the PC player base. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I believe the PC player base is always going to be larger than the console player base because MMOs are targeted at PC players. I know people are going to misconstrue what I said, and that happens every time I make global statements like this, but that is the truth. Nothing thus far has proven to me that consoles have a larger player pool of interested MMO gamers than PC does. Even with Throne and Liberty hitting 300,000 concurrent at its peak, even with it potentially hitting 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 concurrent across every major platform, with the game hitting over 3 million players in its first week, with the overwhelming success that it has already been, I am curious to see how it's going to ultimately end up, how well it will do over the first month. A steady decline will always be the case over the course of the first week, the second, third, and fourth week, because as people approach endgame, they get bored, there's nothing left to do. The first 3 to 6 months of a game's life cycle are the most important because it gives a gauge of how well the devs are at retaining player retention. Will this ultimately be a success? Only time will tell. But I'm more than happy to be covering it in the meantime. Hey you, where do you think you're going? Don't you close out of this tab. I didn't give you permission to do that. Sit your ass back down. Click one of the 2 videos that are gonna be on screen in just a moment and keep watching my content. Keep enjoying my content.